piggybacking on something you said earlier, Andy, about all the models like internally at these big tech corporations being pretty much what GPT-4 is or GPT-5 could be. Did you hear about last year? This AI engineer was working on Google's Lambda model, and he
Yeah,
said
Blake
that
Lemoine.
yeah, he said that it's like sentient or something. And then recently, another Google engineer quit because he's like concerned about like all these about AI's dangers to society. Like, how do you respond to that? It seems like they have some really cool stuff
Well,
there.
Blake Lemoine is out of his damn mind. Is the
Yes, I
is
was
the
about
start
to
of it.
say. But Hinton isn't. But Hinton is not.
No, Hinton's a genius, and we couldn't have done anything we'd done without Hinton. But he is also 75. And if I was 75 and had put that much in of a career together, I wouldn't take much pushing to maybe stop doing Google hours and start, talking more generally about the whole thing. It is a little bit concerning when that many people say it's, things are scary that I can't see. But yeah. Anyway, what's Johnny?
Can I bring a scary moment in, and then I'm going to relate it back to blockchain, right? Because we've already seen it happen a couple times here in the U.S., and I know my friends across the pond already think we're pretty ridiculous, but we've had a couple of instances where there's been AI-initiated sort of SWATs, where AI has been used to call local police departments and claim that there are active shooters on these big campuses. And it's created, of course, chaos at a local level, right? Maximizing the fear that's already in the system and using these secondary systems to overwhelm real people. And I think we're going to see more of it, because if it can be used, it will be used, right? Not just from a chaos perspective, but also from a scamming perspective. And that's where I think blockchain really can offer a solution when we start looking at authentication and encryption and making use of some of the authenticating abilities of blockchain, because we're going to need it. Because you and I on this screen here, at some point, we won't be able to tell who's real and who's not.
Welcome to a special episode of the Medallion XLN Podcast. I'm calling this podcast the panel of experts. We have leaders from all aspects of technology, from artificial intelligence, metaverse, blockchain. We have Mike Griffin from AR and metaverse technologies. We have Andy from artificial intelligence technologies. We have frequent guest Johnny Law, blockchain auditor and expert, and also Kadan from Komodo Platforms. Can everyone go around and just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about yourselves? Starting with Mike.
Hi, my name is Mike Griffin. I'm the Managing Director of Augmented Solutions. And there's two areas that we're very interested in. One is AR and the Metaverse. And the second area, which we're very interested in, is additive manufacture and 3D printing. And what really excites us is where the two cross. So perhaps we'll discuss that later in the podcast.
Andy.
Hi, I'm Andy Surtees. I run Centigral.com, which is a computer vision generation system and service. And I run Collaborating.com as well, which is an AI sharing app. And also starting to do some work with LLMs.
And Johnny Law.
Hey, everybody. I am an expert in nothing. I do enjoy dabbling in everything, and stumbled my way into blockchain about a decade ago, and have taken a little different role in looking at behind the scenes what's going on chain, and led to a number of other questions. And I'm excited to be here.
And Kadan, please introduce yourself.
Hey guys, so my name is Kadan Stadelman. I'm the CTO at Komodo Platform. We're like a blockchain technology provider and atomic swap as well as DeFi stack pioneers. We've been around also for close to a decade in the space and actively expanding our technology stack in regards to blockchain interoperability, which is kind of our expertise here. Thank you.
Awesome. So a lot's been happening in the news recently. There's been a lot of bank crashes. Silicon Valley Bank, I just think beginning of the week, First Republic Bank went down. And how do you guys respond to that? Do you think that's a good thing that we are moving away from banks that function and maybe towards a more decentralized financial way of doing things, or is this?
It's bad.
Thanks.
Yeah,
it's bad. So if you're ARM, for example, and ARM's a pretty big company, and you're unable to get access to your clearing account, which has got $23 million worth of money in it, and you're about to run a payroll, it's pretty serious. So there's an awful lot of people that were exposed to SVP, and they were all in the sort of high-tech sector, so it was like a bucket of cold water. Luckily, we don't have any money there. But I'm going to ask the question, does anybody else have any money in Silicon Valley Bank?
Well, I think I look at it from two perspectives.
We're not,
right?
None of us are wealthy enough.
I think it's both. I think it's good and bad, right? I think kind of giving this wake up call and just clarifying on the fact that in traditional banking and finance, with the whole kind of mass, the numbers, just everything that matters is just based 100% on trust, right? Well, if you look at alternatives in finance, it's specifically talking about blockchain technology, DeFi stack. It's kind of the opposite. It's a real reverse, kind of the whole trust, right? That factor trust. First of all, it doesn't exist, but if it were to exist, we could say that trust is based on maths, just the other way around, and you could always validate and approve, and something like that just couldn't happen, right? Money couldn't just disappear. That's impossible, but it's something that has repeated throughout history again and again. And Silicon Valley Bank is just one other item on the list, and an ever expanding list. In a few years from now, it's probably gonna 100 more banks on that list.
Well,
obviously the impact again on humans and that aspect is very negative.
Yeah, I would say I agree 100% here. That Satoshi said it clearly that the only thing wrong with fiat currency is so much trust is required in order to use it. And he's spot on. And then from a different perspective, I view most of what's going to occur in the banking sector as the banks being nationalized. So essentially coming under the rule of centralized governance. So as each one gets bailed out, so to speak, by a larger piece or a larger fish in the pond, so to speak, it just gets closer and closer to being controlled by the government entirely, so that we bank directly from the treasury rather than a bank.
Well, on that note, the government bailed out First Republic Bank and instantly sold it off to Chase. And they did the same thing with Silicon Valley Bank. So right now, Chase is one of the largest banks possibly in the world. So we are definitely getting more centralized. Now, how does that affect innovation in technology, do you guys think?
Is it relevant? I think it's the first question. For somebody who's quick show of hands around the table. How many people have raised money and have had to go through getting investment cash for startups? So we've all done it. So we're in that interesting club, isn't it? And I didn't get money from a clearing bank on both occasions. So they were specialist vehicles, venture capital funds, VCT funds in my particular case, and high net worth individuals. So for businesses that are high risk seed and maybe Series A, then you're whether it's a big clearing bank or a government-owned bank makes little difference, as long as you've got access to the more specialist geared finance. And the danger will be whether what happened in the UK. So in the UK, one of the banks, Barclays, used to run an investment arm, which I knew very well, called Barclays Ventures, and they made a business decision pretty soon after the financial crash. They were going to shut Barclays Ventures down, and so that as a pool of money has been taken off the table. But certainly my friends in venture finance have said the problem isn't the banking. The issue is that there's actually too much money in these funds. High net worths want to invest. They don't have enough safe things they want to invest it in. And so you've got these temporary holding funds with millions and billions of dollars that are not actually doing very much. And that's right now, as far as I'm aware, is actually the problem for people who wish to invest in startups. They have the money, they're just not sure whether they should and whether they've got the appetite for risk. I'm sure some of your followers will have a different view, but that will be interesting.
Now, on this particular topic, I'm definitely more interested in how finances is going to affect technology because, like you said, risky technologies require funding, right? So is there opportunity for, let's say, blockchain, Kadan, this question is directed for you. Is there opportunity for blockchain to develop more tools in order to fund upcoming businesses that's not just blockchain related? Like right now we have a huge AI boom with ChatGPT. Like could blockchain projects fund projects that are in the blockchain space but also outside of it as well?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's a great question. And I definitely do believe that if we look at the industry, we've already seen this happening, right? Like kind of like this crowdfund 2.0, right? Like people looking into like ICOs, IDOs, etc., using like blockchain tools and technologies to raise funds, right? Like, and there's been cases already where like the core projects weren't really like blockchain based, like technologies or something, right? But they've used means of blockchain tech to raise funds. And I believe, right, like situations like the one we're facing now and banks like SBF collapsing, I mean, that's something that like undermines the credibility of like the traditional path towards like funding and finance, like for startups, right? Like it's young folks, right? Like coming out of university, spin-offs, and they understand, right? Like we got to look like for alternatives. And I absolutely believe that blockchain technology itself, right? Like can and will and already is serving as such like a monetary basis, right? Like for these target groups. And I believe that's gonna like steadily like expand, like scale up, right? Like we're looking like, if we look at the market, if we look at like at the monetary basis, at the capitalization, etc., things kind of throughout the years now has just like gone up higher from where they were, say, a few years ago. And I believe like all these, at least like many startups that are, for example, fintech, specific and not necessarily looking to like crypto. If you look at them, even big players started incorporating like the crypto and blockchain technology stack, right? Like taking that like as like end user products, providing like these layers. Like one big name here, PayPal, as an example, right? When they announced, it had a big impact in the industry. And again, like I believe, like absolutely, to answer your question, I believe that's already like happening, and from here it's just like gonna steadily like scale up and go higher. Yeah.
Possible unpopular opinion here. Isn't there some space for a kind of layer in the money system that is just boring and has no innovation at all? And it's just your basic, this is how much a unit of thing is worth, and this is who owns it. And there's no something collapsing and now you don't own it. And there's no suddenly it's worth nothing or 10 times as much. There's just a base layer. Now, I don't know how you do that because the systems we've got at the moment don't sort of hedge towards that. And obviously, I see the need for innovation, but couldn't you have that somewhere else? Can't you do, investing innovation and finance innovation and technology innovation, but just have a kind of stable unit of something? I've not got a proposal for how you would achieve that.
Energy.
But it seems like everyone's trying to come up with clever stuff that is even more complicated than the thing it replaces usually.
I suspect the problem is that as soon as you have some kind of stable currency, some smart aleck is going to come along and find a way of playing the edge or the delta, and then suddenly that stable currency becomes unstable. So pretty much any currency is, in the old days, I had a piece of paper with a picture. Well, it was the Queen. It's now going to be the King. Picture the King on the piece of paper saying, "I promise to pay the bearer £5." And that's a hell of a lot more convenient than carrying 10 pigs underneath my arm. But the problem is the exchange value between the piece of paper and the pigs varies. Because if you have swine flu, then that £5 piece of paper is only equivalent to 3 pigs. And if they have a really good hot season, then that £5 piece of paper is worth 20 pigs. No, other way around. But you get the idea. So stability is a really difficult thing to engineer as soon as it's exchanged with something else. It's this exchange with something else, and that something else, multiple something else's vary, and people play the edge. System becomes unstable.
Yeah.
Very hard.
And that's
So Andy, it has to be a
Kadan
currency
said,
you can't use. You can't change it.
energy. What Kadan said
It would
regarding
sort of
energy
work
is
if
that-
something like Bitcoin. Go on. Sorry, I think we got a delay.
Energy. Oh, mass energy equivalent. That sounds very Larry Niven to me. The only problem is if somebody comes along with a fusion reactor, builds a fusion reactor, and the fusion reactor costs £10 to make, then suddenly your currency, which is based on energy, is worthless.
Actually, based on a conversation that I
That's
had,
correct. That's absolutely correct.
based on a conversation I had
But
with
still.
Andy in our last podcast, we talked about how like innovations in technology is kind of rewriting capitalism and economic models. Andy, could you expand more on that?
Oh yeah, I mean that is a sort of further ahead sort of view of it all, is that the whole point of economics is it's the study of how you operate with scarce resources. Now that assumes that virtually all resources are scarce to some degree. Like air isn't really scarce, but just about everything else is. Now, like you're saying, if suddenly we've got fusion and you can convert a value of energy into an enormously larger value of energy, or we've got some of the things that could be coming within artificial intelligence, where suddenly you've effectively got free what used to be labor, then, suddenly, if things aren't scarce, they're not involved in economics at all. We have no pricing system for air because we don't need one. If it ever became scarce, we would have one. But, there may be some big shocks to the system coming if a bunch of things kind of move either outside of scarcity, literally, or outside of to such abundance that it's sort of too cheap to meter, as they used to say.
Well, that's when the scarcity actually becomes a very dynamic thing, right? Like an unstable, as such, and the definition of these things. And I believe that's where a paradigm shift is gonna take place, right? We might end up with a time where, let's imagine there's no money at all. We wouldn't know, we wouldn't live with it, we wouldn't be raised with it, or whatever, right? Something totally crazy. Here again, same with energy. If we really find ourselves in an era where energy becomes free, and I hope that happens at some point of time. I mean, it would be great, but it would
We've
kill
lost him.
the model of the energy currency. But until then, I believe, yeah.
So it's a difficult one, I think it's a very interesting point about air. Air is free, and water until comparatively recently in the UK was virtually free. So I'm still unmetered. So I pay for the right to have water, but I'm not metered on how much I use. So I suspect that's as close as you're going to get to free.
Getting some interesting things happening with is everyone else seeing what I'm seeing, which is a bunch
Yes,
of presents.
Kadan, I think, is having trouble with his netlink. He's had to go.
He'll rejoin. So what's your take on this, Johnny? Because I know you have more of a libertarian view of this whole thing. So how what's your take on the
I
conversation?
prefer unrealistically optimistic in terms of how we can work together as people, right? But I would tell you everything that's been said about scarcity and how it would change the economy is absolutely on par, right? The the challenge with that stable unit of value is who do you allow to issue it, and ultimately, whoever you allow to issue it is then in control of societal outcomes because they get to design incentivization and penalization infrastructure that helps people decide how to live their lives. And from my perspective, I'd like to get away from that. We've had plenty of that over the last few decades here.
So on that
Yeah,
topic,
it'd be great. It'd be great if you didn't need anyone to issue it. I think that is an inherent problem with, it's an inherent vulnerability in a money supply is someone can decide how much there is. And they can basically, especially the way governments work, dole it out themselves. So, yeah, that's asking for instability, even with the best wishes in the world, which the best wishes in the world are not always present. So yeah, I mean, like, the traditionally gold-based stuff had its advantages, but obviously that supply isn't fully stable either. And I don't think that, like I said, I'm not proposing an answer that I think would fix all of this, but it would just be nice if there was something that I think we kind of agree on what the issues are to solve.
Yeah. What we largely
so
talk
on that
about.
topic, like we all go ahead.
No, I was going to say what we largely talk about is transparency for institution and government, right? And that's what blockchain is great for. And ultimately, getting them to use one would be a pretty impressive act. But we start to see nation states adopt that as their denominator, right? And it can all be audited by the public. Could you imagine if you could audit all the spending that's done by Western governments at a citizen level?
Oh, dear, all those rolls of 800 pound wallpaper that's been used to put into number 10 Downing Street. I think it'd be Johnny. I think it'd be highly entertaining. Um, but hasn't this been tried with cryptocurrency? Isn't cryptocurrency, by its definition, it has you have to do work to make it, but it's effectively unlimited supply, and it's not controlled by any single entity. Isn't that already? And yet, it's probably the most unstable of all currency forms because it's traded. The
I
act of
wouldn't.
it's kind of quantum. Isn't it a bit like quantum theory? As soon as you observe something and do something with it, it's no longer stable. The value is all over the shop.
I mean, it's a very interesting interpretation of it, but I'd say it's the opposite, or it's something different. It's actually like regulated by everyone. Every single entity and every participant of the network is a regulator of the cryptocurrency. Depending on which currency we're talking about, there are those like really with a hard cap, limited, mathematically validatable, like Bitcoin, 21 million units forever and ever more, right? Like, but there are those definitely like, questionable, like tokenomics models, business models with an architecture that actually like represents just fiat currency, like all these CBDCs and all that like stuff that's coming. Yeah, kinda. But again, I believe like looking at crypto, and I believe it's the better money, right? Like, but I'm biased here, right? Like, obviously.
Yeah, I would just say you're not wrong, Mike, that we've allowed it to become all this sort of crazy asset speculation and these meme tokens and allowed that to take over the conversation. But if we return to the roots of like why it was brought into existence, and there are quite a few projects that stick to those core principles, it does solve a lot of the challenges that we see.
And it's funny that we're having this conversation around now because the reason that cryptocurrencies is even a thing is because of the banking collapse in 2008. And that is the inspiration for Satoshi Nakamoto to create Bitcoin. So with these banking collapses repeating themselves, do you think what kind of innovations, especially right now with Metaverse, artificial intelligence, and blockchain just being the leaders in the current innovative space. Like, do we think that there's like some sort of mesh of technologies that will come out of it, or does anyone recognize any emergent technologies that seem promising?
I think we're all gonna agree that AI, is like just like the topic right now, like for everyone, right? Like specifically like for engineers, like tech folks, like it's.
I'm going to take a country point of view, because so the country point of view is, so with a lot of the AI models that I've seen, it entirely depends on the training set. So in many ways, what you see AI being is a poor parrot of the sum total of humanity. No wonder the things go crazy on a regular basis. If I had to absorb, all the right-wing stuff and all the left-wing stuff and all the stuff in the middle, and then not being biased but being biased, and a training set that is not representative of everybody and everything and everybody's interest, you're going to go mad. So it's not surprising that it's the way that it is.
So
I think it's a human problem. I think currency stability is a human problem. And the reason why you get these peaks between 2008 and today is the people who did it last time have retired. And so all the politicians who got burnt, 2009, we're going to regulate banks. Oh, it's a really good idea. We should regulate them. We should make sure that they've got sufficient currency buffers. 20 years later, they say, oh, we've had 20 years without any accidents. Oh, we should remove the currency buffers because we clearly don't need them. And guess what happens? And you'll get it every 20 years.
I mean, that's not exactly what happened in these cases, though, because some of the things that they did was, say, for instance, you've got to hold a bunch of long-term government debt. You've got a reserve requirement that includes holding all these long-dated treasuries, assuming no repayment risk, which might be true, but also underlying, which might not be, but they're assuming that. The thing is, they haven't had a repayment problem. What they have had is a value volatility problem.
Yes,
because if you've got a small reserve ratio and you've got a volatile asset that you're acting for regulatory purposes like it's not volatile, then you can run into problems extremely quickly if anything unusual happens, like interest rates change, which has become unusual over the past 20 years. It didn't used to be. But suddenly if a thing that used to happen all the time happens, your entire system is screwed. And it's a system you designed in response to the previous problem.
Yeah,
mortgage-backed securities are now relatively safe.
Until
they blew up the world last time.
Until they deregulate them, which they will.
But what I'm saying is you can cause problems by complying with regulations as well, having all this long-dated treasuries.
It's always a moving target, right? Regulation. And I would just say most of what we see is regulatory capture, where the folks that are breaking the rules have no accountability. The folks that are supposed to oversee them are also breaking the rules. And generally speaking, because it's done without any sort of actual transparency in terms of how the money's moving through the marketplace, they can just do it again. So we can create new laws. We can create all sorts of interesting strategies to reduce exposure to some of this. But until there's actual transparency that's auditable and cannot be essentially altered after the fact, we're not going to change the behavior of humans. Mike said it right. It's a human problem, not just on the AI side, but even in this currency conversation. That's why math should reign supreme.
Well, here's one way of tying them both together, right? So there's, as well as regulation, because regulation sounds like a safe thing. That's more regulation's got to be safer, right? It's in the word. Something regulated is safe. But a lot of what regulation is officially declaring something safe that isn't really, but we're just going to act like it is. Mortgage-backed securities in 2008, officially safe, AAA rated, stamp of approval, it's safe. Treasuries, safe, fine. What you really could do with is some way of actually analysing the volatility of all these assets. And if people, you could do market regulation if people understood what they were dealing with, but it's too much information for one person to handle. Fortunately, we've just invented a machine for solving situations where there's too much information for someone to handle. And that's AI. Now, it's not going to do it right now because it's unreliable as well. It might help in some situations, but I think we can definitely build towards a situation where it solves the market regulation problem, and then we can get rid of the state regulation problem, which is that a lot of it is not actually saying things are dangerous, it's saying things that are safe that aren't.
Okay, probably very true. Let's just add one thing which I think is worth putting onto the pile, is I suspect an awful lot of why 2008, and 2008 is a great study in all of this, so how can government debt in Iceland can go from AAA rating one day and be junk debt a month later? So you have to say...
Because credit raters are crooks.
You got it. So in the old days, the way that it worked is when a government wanted to sell its bonds, the buyer would pay for the credit rating. And then they changed the rules to say that the seller could have the credit rating. And so guess what? They shopped around to find the seller which would give them the best credit rating, which meant that everybody priced it artificially good. And I think that's so. I think there's a massive role in the monitoring piece. Is it the regulation? May not be. Andy, it sounds like you're more knowledgeable than I am on all of this. But certainly the ability to independently monitor what is going on, so you can take corrective action. Somebody or something that's got no dog in the fight. That's an American expression? I think it is. No dog in the fight. You've got to have somebody who's watching all of this, who has no dog in the fight, who's knowledgeable, and can say, you need to take action, or problems are going to occur. And I think that sounds like a really good role, if you can teach it, for AI tools to do this. Other tools too, but AI has a particular role.
Yeah, it 100% does.
So I have input in that particular statement that you just made, Mike, that even if an agency starts off not having a dog in the fight, eventually it becomes politicized, and
they have a dog in the fight.
Incentive structures determine that they have a dog in the fight. That's why I look at blockchain as a promising technology for that aspect of transparency and trustlessness, because that is one of the major issues with economics. You have to trust people. And blockchain technology gives you the ability to accurately make decisions, because you're not trusting another person who's incentivized. So, Kadan, what's your take on this? Like, is there a way that blockchain could solve this issue, or is this beyond blockchain scope, as far as credit ratings and various things like that?
Yeah,
that we're talking?
I mean, I think probably not just like blockchain, right? Like in particular, probably it's going to be like kind of like a combination of various technology stacks. And I believe AI is definitely something like very promising. But like aforementioned by one of the participants earlier today, that it's based on training data we provide. It's going to be a matter of time for those like big government nation level players to start like messing with that layer, try to influence the training data that's getting hit like into AI, and so on, right? They're gonna like infiltrate kind of probably like these small agencies, with like hundreds of like employees sitting at the computer typing like some training data in and that stuff. So we have like to think about that. We also have to think about, right, when is AI gonna reach the state where it's gonna like train itself better and really like objectively than a human would do, or like some corporations would do. I mean, they have an interest. We're all talking like mainly about OpenAI when we talk about AI, right? Like, I mean, there's more models and the experts here probably using like many different things. I as myself as kind of like an end user like in this space, well, I've played with NVIDIA Jetson like boards like a few years ago when that like came out, and oh nice AI, but now it's really like OpenAI, and I mean, there's a lot of like question marks I really can't answer. I'm not an expert like in this field. But to answer your question, I'm certain 100% that, like decentralized, trustless technology stacks, combined like with something like, artificial intelligence, machine learning, can solve societal issues that we couldn't solve because our species is just corrupted, right? Like, period. That's kind of like the wrap up around like the human. And I believe, right, at some point, any human's gonna like fuck up, sorry for my wording here, where I have big hope that AI might not make that mistake, right? If we really like teach it that fundamentals.
Okay. Now I want to switch. I want to concentrate our conversation around AI now, because AI is huge right now and definitely has huge societal consequences that we just don't even know. Like, what does regulation look like at this current moment? Should we start regulating AI and handcuff it? And if we do, who's going to be regulating it? What's your take, gentlemen?
Hell
It
no.
needs to pay national insurance contributions. This is it's quite interesting. So this is linked to the robotics argument, and Andy smiled at that one. So I'll give an example. I go into my local Tesco's, and this annoys me, by the way. And there's one till which has a human being, and there's a whole bunch of other tills where they are expecting me to not only pay for the goods but scan them and pay for it myself manually and put it into a bag, and that offends me. It offends me on a whole number of things. And it offends me because I don't use it. I try to use the people because, of course, trying to keep people in work. And you may say I'm not hiding to nothing, but my view is these digital checkout stations need to be paying national insurance contributions tax in the same way that a human does, because you've got this whole problem of what do we do with everybody when everything's taken over? This is an old one. Andy must have heard this argument 1,000 times. What do humans do when there's nothing else to do?
Do you want me to go right in at the end and answer that one, or should we work our ways? Well, what does it mean that there's nothing to do? It kind of means that there's no problems left where people would value a change in the state of the universe. You employ somebody because in some way you want the universe to be different to how it is right now. Wouldn't it be great if there was a person here selling tickets? Wouldn't it be great if if this building was a different color? No, well, I'll hire a person. I'll change the state of the universe. Now, if we ever get to a situation where there is nobody on Earth that has any change to the state of the universe that they would be willing to exchange resources for, then fucking brilliant. That we've won. That's the finish line. The point, it seems unlikely it'll ever happen, but really, if there are no jobs for humans, we've won. What could be better than that?
Wait, hold on. I need to push back. Let's break it down in what you mean. Because if there's no jobs for humans, and like your equation is no jobs for humans times X equals we won. So how is that possible? Because don't humans need to play a role in building society?
Imagine a situation in which there are no jobs left for humans, and then you're imagining problems that come with that. Now, you could set up an organization to deal with those problems. So now there are jobs for humans again. Because we've set up an organization, there's at least jobs for those people to solve that problem. If there's two problems, there's now space for two organizations to do that. What I'm saying is, if you imagine it as a situation where we're sort of imprisoned by the AI, which is kind of ludicrous for reasons I can go into, then you can come up with a grim scenario for all this. But in fact, imagine what it would mean for it to be a situation where there is nothing that you could possibly think of to improve using human talents and skills and labor. That would be fantastic. I don't know. It might. Is this? Maybe I'm so used to this thought that it comes really easy to me. Do I need to explain this a couple of different ways? Or
you do, because like if there's no jobs for humans, like I'm like at what purpose does a human serve? Right? Like what?
Up to them.
One more time.
There's very.
Well, Andy, are you saying we could all play golf and go to the beach whenever we wanted? Is that the problem?
Exactly. We'll be back.
Well, yeah, if that's what you want to do. I mean, there's not a lot of people get to the end of their life, lay on their deathbed and say, I wish I'd worked more hours. You actually, people imagine you get all this meaning from things that you have to do to sustain yourself. You don't. You get it from other people. You get it from, enlightening activities you spend your time on. And occasionally, it's good to feel useful as well, but this does not have to mean doing robot jobs for them so that you've got something to keep yourself busy all day.
Slightly different
Here's the part where I'm having a problem with, right? Let me just go first. The part that I'm having a problem with is that, like, the economics model, like, because right now, Jobs for Human provides resources so you can, like, get a big house if you want, right? And if there's no Jobs for Humans, then who's going to provide you can have resources. Like, how would the AI, if a AI runs the entire world or whatever, how would the AI allocate resources to each particular person? And where would the creativity be? Like, there would be no incentive model for, let's say, because the AI is just giving everyone the same food. So there's no incentive model for, like, a chef to improve on his creation. So everyone's eating the same bland food. And the AI is logically saying, okay, you're a family of, like, 5, so you have this amount of square foot to live in. And there's no,
I think you're imagining communism, not like opposed scarcity.
It is like that. It's communism. That's what I'm saying. Like, if
no, it isn't, because nobody's in. If there's a problem, if you don't like the food, if you don't like the house, then there's a job for a person to do. We've not reached the finish line yet.
I think
by definition.
I think I would really worry about kind of how do I get resources to the others, etc. It's rather worry how do I get resources to myself? How can I sustain my computational power, my storage level? And I think at that point the matrix thesis could really kick in, because our brain is probably a quantum computer with a reliable neural network. It could hopefully attach to our brains, kind of utilize that, and maybe we're looking at totally different problems for the future. And I mean who knows, this dystopian, crazy ideas of AI getting out of control. I mean, if we reach a level where AI replicates itself better again than a human does and trains itself better than a human does, I think that's probably going to be the first kind of point in time where we'll realize, okay, shit's hitting the turbo fan right now, right? Yeah, but I think it's a great idea thinking about AI as kind of like a god. There's this meme, right? Where kind of AI took over control of everything, and then a sunstorm killed it, and people went back on praying to the sun and stuff. And who knows, maybe that's the endless iteration of humanity. I mean, I don't know, but yeah, interesting.
If you get a chance, read Greg Bear and the Culture series, because it goes on about all of society is run by machines, by the AIs, and each AI has a different personality, very much like people. And it gives you a view of what it's like to be a citizen in that society. And actually, it's quite reassuring, because you get to do lots of fun, and you can work if you wish, or not work if you don't want to, and you have a certain allocation of, as you say, mass energy units that you can use to do stuff. Okay, yeah, so cool. You've got flexibility. But so I am teasing Andy. He's having to drag heavily now on his vape to recover. Sorry, Johnny, what's your feeling on this from America?
How'd you guess? Huh? So I'm going to go back to the original question about regulation of AI, and is it shouldn't we sort of scenario? I don't think it matters, to be honest, because ultimately, if it's decided that there should be all this regulation, it's already escaped all of that. It can be done on private servers. I mean, it'll just continue regardless. So having honest conversation about what's actually occurring in the development of AI in a public sphere is probably a smart thing, and being able to see what's gone on, because regardless of whether it's regulated or not, it will continue. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. That's just not going to happen. So being able to understand how it's developing is probably more important. And then two, I think what do we do when everything is automated and provided for us and all that sort of stuff? What does it mean to be human? I think that's what the conversation really is at that point, and that's a deep conversation, because I have a tendency to believe we're here for a purpose, and through the work that we choose to do, through the creations that we make on our own, we develop ourselves, and through the environments that we live and all of the adversity we overcome, we become the best version of ourselves. And there's like epigenetics in play here, right? So genetic expression is a part of that, based on our inputs, based on the food, based on the challenges. We're all vastly different humans because of all the decisions that we've made along the way. So I think there's some really interesting consequence if we don't have as much adversity as what we see in this world today.
Yeah. I think we enter into a new paradigm where we have more problems to figure out. But definitely, like, I don't know, it's just because if we have a AI that is very advanced and it can pretty much do all our jobs, then like logically it makes sense to just let the AI do all our jobs. But then there's all these humans, like, and at first, yeah, the first week or so everyone's going to be on vacation, but then what, right? Like, I don't think we're just going to be living in this like utopia forever. Like, there's going to be some sort of issue that like arises that none of us can even imagine in that particular scenario.
So have you seen latest studies on like IQ trends across the globe? I don't know if you missed my question.
IQ studies on trends across the globe.
Yeah, 100%. So I would just tell you guys to take a look, right? See if we're actually becoming more intelligent in this world that we live, where we have convenience everywhere, or if the opposite is true, and where you think that actually is coming from, based on we are living at the highest standard we've ever lived at in the course of history. Yet we're becoming somewhat less intelligent and able to problem solve and critical think, so to speak. So yeah, it's interesting. So if we continue to automate things and make our lives more comfortable and easy, where does that lead us? And then you start to understand when they call us useless eaters, we're maybe what they're talking about.
I mean, it might be a few years ago now. Last time I looked, and we may be looking at studies that measure different things. I've seen exactly the opposite trend, that we've been getting some number of IQ points per decade higher on average. I don't want to do a study off here, but I'm sure I've seen contrary evidence.
But a loss of focus. So there's a book over there. I'm not sure I could recommend it on Dwayne's podcast. I don't know what the implications are. But there's the book that I've been reading, which is called Stolen Focus, which is worth a read. And it's about the fact that we are less able to concentrate, driven by the amount of disruption that mobile phones and email and instant messaging and social media generates all the time, disturbs your train of thought, and more importantly, the amount of information we're trying to absorb each day. So it's worth a read. So I think Andy's right. I've seen studies which say that we're getting the IQ points for school children have got higher, but I've also seen other stuff, again, in that book and other independent research, which shows our ability to concentrate is, and more importantly, to critically dissect an argument is reduced. And you can see that in the way that you construct advertising. So in the old days, you used to produce a one-page flyer and you'd say this is what we do and how wonderful it is. And these days, nobody even reads the first 3 lines. So you're now having to compress your argument into what it used to be a page, then it was a paragraph, now it's a line, and now people don't even read. It's got to be a video, and for the video, it's got to be the first 1 second of the video to make the impact, or they will not go on to the next second. So, because I've been doing some social media work, and LinkedIn, you would think, all business people, yeah, they're going to be considered. I thought, no, you don't get it in that impact within 1 second. no. Ah,
And LinkedIn is very nearly as full of
attention.
LinkedIn's very nearly as full of clickbait as everything else.
Oh,
Maybe the percentage is a
totally
couple of points
depressing.
lower, but it's pretty close.
In fact, anybody from LinkedIn who runs it is listening. Stop what you're doing. You're wrecking it, please. It's no longer. I don't know what it is these days.
I think I can't disagree with both of you on this focus thing. I think that's. I haven't got any numbers, but that feels very right. And I think it's got to do with push versus pull media, right? We want information. Lots of people are prepared to provide information. So we go, okay, push me information when you see fit. Accept notifications on my phone. You push me stuff. And of course, they want to push as much as they can in as an attention grabbing way as possible, because that's how the economics works. So, the whole model is, once there's some demand for this stuff, but then who decides the flow of it is the provider. It's not great. So the solution's got to be pull media. You have an AI that goes out and finds you what it thinks is the best amount of stuff for you to know about something.
Okay, just
Maybe
a quick
one
question.
Point, like, to add on
Quick
the,
question.
on the intelligence drop, because I've seen there were like opposing opinions here. And what I've recently read was the impact it had on children. So I'm a father of multiple kids, right? Like father of 6 in total. Some of our teenagers already, and there's this gap, a real knowledge gap, and you could really say that the teachers gave them a pandemic bonus. Like kids who can't read properly, etc. They made it out. They got a degree. They're set, but what that's gonna have negative impact in terms of your career and further evolution, etc. I think that one's gonna be kind of a critical issue. We're looking at I have no exact numbers in terms of how many families or parents didn't get along with it well, kind of not being able or capable of educating their kid or doing it. But yeah, many just said, okay, laissez-faire, okay, happened. The others going through this as well. So yeah, but anyway, just wanted to add this. And there's 2 or 3 studies around this topic that say we're getting dumber or more stupid or whatever they call it. It's quite interesting topic.
Just a quick note for everybody. I don't know what your email system is like, but I have 39,000 unread emails. And quite a lot of people who I don't remember ever giving my email address to, or who I'm interested in, or who I'm ever going to contact back. And it's so. And now I go through and I don't even delete them. Andy, you need to do me a junk mail filter, mate. Okay, as your next project.
I just buy more space.
There's some decent stuff out there already. Well, my solution is I've got various emails of increasing level of trust. I've got.
That's right.
This is the I think you're going to sell this email to someone email, and and there's some chance I'll look at it. If you tell me you're going to send me something to that email this second, and you do, I can see it. I'll find it. In 10 minutes, it'll be below 1,000 emails from other people who sold my email address. Then I've got I trust you not to do that, but that's about as far as I do trust your emails. And there's 100, and then I've got, if you've got this email, I would help you move a body sort of level trust. So, and all the way up to that. So you just filter things from different sources, give out. Also, Gmail's got a fantastic thing where you can just put plus and then anything on the end of your email address and you can see where it came from. So if you've got a semi-throwaway Gmail, then you can see where the spam's coming from because they've got the version with their own identifier on it. So you can then go and delete spammers. Anyway, there's ways to deal with there should be a better way to deal with it, and I'm sure it's coming. And this is a surmountable problem.
Okay.
So speaking
quick
of that,
question: who's got 40,000? Who's got 40,000 unread emails? So what have you got? So Dwayne, how many unread emails have you got?
well, in one of my emails, I have 4,000, but I don't. That's the throwaway email. I barely There's my main email, and that stacks up really fast. But I'm super disciplined about just deleting everything, and I like to maintain it at 4 emails. There.
Wow.
That's because find them. I can't find them to delete them. But like my primary email, I try to keep like as low as possible so I know like what's coming in. What about you guys?
Well, org account, I'm not gonna lie to you. Yeah, it's kind of like a couple thousand unread emails. It's like under 5,000, but it's I don't know,
Wow.
4,000 like unread emails. That's org
Kill
account.
for that.
Yeah, my main kind of like, personal email account that I'm also like very kind of like, serious about, etc. Also use it like for important stuff. That's like at around like, whatever like stacks up within a day or maybe two, 20, 30 emails, very like strict, junk mail and spam filter. So that one is doing like well. But again, org account, like work accounts, I mean, they turned kind of into like a spam account. And I mean, I admit I kind of like tend to just like use that email, with whatever like I use it, as opposed like to having a real like spam account, and it kind of like, yeah, just evolved into what it is. I don't really like search stuff there. So yeah, I use kind of like my personal one and have that one. Yeah. And also like my personal one, I mean, kind of like identify as much with my project that my personal one is basically kind of like the project related like email address like that I'm using like for Komodo.
So this sounds like a topic of like, or that a topic that can transition into innovation and disruptions. Because like right now, speaking of Google, it's being disrupted by ChatGPT, right? Because why should I search when I could just go to this chatbot and this chatbot can just give me whatever information I'm looking for? So how else do you guys think that current innovative technologies are going to disrupt the world?
I mean, I first of all think that OpenAI kind of like forced Google and other players to kind of like release just something, right? Like to quickly throw something out and say, hey, we're here as well. Kind of like, this attentive deficit thing. And I believe they have gear down there, right? Like unreleased stuff, right? Like what they're probably not like weren't probably like after with was like actually training the systems and tech that they all have, developed. I'm looking at IBM, Google, Meta is like kind of like, announced they were like deep into AI and like many others. And I think like, if you look at Silicon Valley, I mean, obviously probably like, looking at US based organizations, NSA, the biggest like employer of like mathematicians, like physics experts and like IT engineers. I mean, I don't want to know what they have developed or like used in terms of like AI technology, machine learning. And I think when kind of like, like some of these kind of, to me, they're almost like kind of like a multinational like organization, like on a government level. If you look at Google, to me, that's like a super huge player. And I wouldn't even like dare to compare OpenAI with them. I think as, Google's gonna kind of like, really like join this game and not just being like kind of pushed into just releasing like anything, we'll see like the competition, like really like ramp up, and we'll I think, in a year to maybe two from now, I personally believe like the AI landscape will will be diversified. There'll be like, the biggest tech players, one of the core business, one of the core like product here, when you provide tech as such, is going to be AI and AI backed like tech, right? Like, and yeah, just my take on this. Again, not an AI expert, but what I sense kind of like where things are moving to and what happening here.
Yeah, I would just say, even in 4 weeks' time.
Sorry, go on.
No, I'm saying, my apologies. Even in 4 weeks' time, the tools that are available and the applications of second layer sort of AI that uses OpenAI as a base layer has just exploded, and the number of tools that we see now building on each other's open source technology just continues to like enhance that base capability. So that's why I say I'm glad to build in the open to be able to see it. But to your point, Kadan, I think there is already significant tools that have not been necessarily released, and we don't necessarily understand their capabilities in this moment.
I agree on the kind of exponential nature of things building on top of each other, but unlike you two, I suspect that what we're seeing is pretty close to what they've got, actually. I think they all want to kind of act like they've got this extra super secret source that's, it's GPT-10 equivalent, but we just can't give it to you because it's so dangerous. I think even though like things like plugins, we know they exist, we can't all get access to them yet. There's things like that, but I think in terms of the actual model capabilities, their unrestricted models are probably a little ahead of what we're seeing, but not years ahead. I think that what they've got is a matter of some weeks ahead of what we get access to ourselves. I don't think there's this huge kind of secret tech thing going on beyond what we can see.
Well,
I'm also going to place a bet, which is that we're going to see a massive rush, because right now the every man jack who's into venture capital is trying to find something with the word AI in it to invest in it. Does feel an awful lot like previous bubbles we've had. So I don't disagree that it's going to be useful. Am I going to have to argue with my HAL 10,000 to open the front door so I can get into the house? No, I don't see that. I could probably do that with Siri. That's a really good programming task. I must build one. But a general purpose AI, we decades off. I still think we're decades off. I think the tools are better. I think people like Andy is going to have some very good looking tools and to do stuff. But general purpose AI, the ability to solve any problem at any scale, no, we're a long way off that.
I think a few years, next 5, under a decade.
Yeah.
Kadan, I bet you a pint or an alcoholic or non-alcoholic drink of your choice that we will not have a general purpose AI like the HAL 9000. In 5 years' time. Dwayne, you're gonna keep that bet? We're gonna do this bet?
I'm in on that.
5 years.
I'm in on that.
I think we're very close to. Have you guys heard about Auto GPT, which is like a continuous AI model that you can give it tasks and you could ask it to order or set up your birthday party, and it'll reach out to caterers and do all this other stuff. It's kind of here right now. Can you expand more on that, Andy?
Server.
Auto GPT?
Yeah, there's loads of these. Yeah, so there's also GPT, Baby AGI. I've been playing a lot with Do Anything Machine recently, which is interesting. We're building some stuff that's kind of a slightly more limited version of that. Basically, you can hook one thing up to another thing, and it just changes. Now, it depends on your definition of general AI. The standard thing has always been, as soon as it's possible, it's not AI anymore. That's just computing. There's if in the 60s, if you'd have said, you can beat the world chess champion, they'd say, well, that's definitely intelligence. Clearly, there's no other way. By 97, that's not intelligence anymore. That's computing. But there's in 5 years, there's going to be something that realistically now we would call general intelligence. It might not absolutely be able to do everything. Can every robot do every dexterous move that a human could do in 5 years? Quite possibly not. But yeah, it's going to be able to do a large percentage of all the mental basically, my cutoff for general AI is my definition of general AI is if you've got an Upwork account with an infinite amount of money in it and a time machine, everything you can get done by that method, by paying humans to do it on Upwork and sending it to you, so it's digital, it's happening on screens digitally. If an AI can do all of that, it's a general AI as far as I'm concerned. There's some things you can add on as requirements. But if it can do all of that, then I'd call it general, and I think you're 2 years out from that.
Okay, so just piggybacking on something you said earlier, Andy, about all the models internally at these big tech corporations being pretty much what GPT-4 is or GPT-5 could be. Did you hear about last year? This AI engineer was working on Google's Lambda model, and he said
Blake Lemoine.
Yeah, he said that it's sentient or something. And then recently, another Google engineer quit because he's concerned about about AI's dangers to society. How do you respond to that? It seems like they have some really cool stuff there.
Blake Lemoine is out of his damn mind. Is the
yes, I was about to say. But Hinton isn't. but Hinton is not.
No, Hinton's a genius, and we couldn't have done anything we've done without Hinton. But he is also 75. And if I was 75 and had put that much in of a career together, I wouldn't take much pushing to maybe stop doing Google hours and start, talking more generally about the whole thing. It is a little bit concerning when that many people say it's, things are scary that I can't see. But yeah. Anyway, what's Johnny?
Can I bring a scary moment in, and then I'm going to relate it back to blockchain, right? Because we've already seen it happen a couple times here in the U.S., and I know my friends across the pond already think we're pretty ridiculous, but we've had a couple of instances where there's been AI initiated sort of SWATs where AI has been used to call local police departments and claim that there are active shooters on these big campuses. And it's created, of course, chaos at a local level, right? Maximizing the fear that's already in the system and using these secondary systems to overwhelm real people. And I think we're going to see more of it, because if it can be used, it will be used, right? Not just from a chaos perspective, but also from a scamming perspective. And that's where I think blockchain really can offer a solution when we start looking at authentication and encryption and making use of some of the authenticating abilities of blockchain, because we're going to need it. Because you and I on this screen here, at some point, we won't be able to tell who's real and who's not. Proof of human.
Yeah.
Agreed. There's an organisation called TQ, and one of their goals is verifiable truth. Now, I've challenged them on all of that, how you verify it. But having a custodian for what is real has gone from nice to have to being essential. And I think the 21st century battle is the truth, because it's under attack from so many sources as to what did you say it? Did somebody else say that? Okay. I've had ridiculous ones about is the world flat? And I won't say who it is. I'll protect the innocent, because he'd been reading something on the internet, and I said to him, "Well, I've flown round it in one direction, so I can tell you that." I know it's night when I rang you from Australia. So how do you explain that one with a flat Earth? Anyway, you can go through all this, but the point is, it's so easy to pump out untruths, and the filtering algorithms, and I suspect we're set up this way as well. Our mentality is lies propagate so much faster than the reality. So I think maybe the final topic on the call, Dwayne, is to talk about blockchain and the truth. I think John, you're onto something.
Well, yeah, Laura Di Giovanni, we had her on one of the podcasts in TQ. Shout out to her, because she hooked me up with some very fire guests.
She's very good. Very good girl. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. I mean, I've been playing around with Stable Diffusion. You can put in your picture and, say like, put me in a space suit on a Mars colony, and it very convincingly can do that, as well as Midjourney and DALL-E 2. And these technologies are improving rapidly. Like, there's plugins that you can add on to Stable Diffusion, one called ControlNet, where you can position the body exactly how you want the body to be when the image is rendered. Also, automatic 111, which gives you amazing filters to look just like Midjourney, even on Stable Diffusion, and also LoRaNet. And I'm sure Andy, you know a few more that I don't, but these technologies are evolving rapidly, and especially because Stable Diffusion is open source. There's people from all these different disciplines who are able to contribute to it and improve these rapidly, to the point where I saw on Reddit, you see these models, they're super rapid, and they're to the point where they're able to in real time affect or change the generation of a video. Like they just input a video and in real time they just like enter prompts and change what the video is doing, what the main character or main subject in the video is doing. So I think it's very interesting.
Which is your favorite? Wayne, sorry to interrupt here. Excuse me. You said you use like DALL-E, Midjourney, like Stable Diffusion. Which one would you say like is the number one you use again and again over the others?
Oh yeah, because of ease of use, Midjourney, because you just get these amazing high quality image generations. But as far as innovation, Stable Diffusion is doing pretty good. It's just you have to be technical enough to set up like all these additional plugins like LoRa, Automatic 111, and the Control Net in order to like really do some amazing cool things with it. But like if you just don't, if you don't know how to set that up, then Midjourney is the way to go.
Awesome. Thanks.
Quick plug. Stable Diffusion and Alpaca and LoRa are all on collaborating, all set up inside Collabs for free.
Hey, he'll play with that later, Andy. Andy, you need to send us an email, we'll play. Has everybody seen the picture of the Pope in his white puffer jacket?
Yeah.
And I couldn't, we've all looked at this professionally. I genuinely could not tell the difference. And even worse than that, he should have one. That's one of those things he should definitely have in his wardrobe. He looks so cool in it. So, amazing.
That was Midjourney 5. That's my pick for best all-rounder, I think, Midjourney 5. But, on truth and genuineness, I mean, this weirdly comes back to money again because, at one point in time, we had banknotes that were literally just printed, I promised to pay the bearer on demand and then signed or whatever. We've since added a load of security features because more and more people became able to print things that basically look like banknotes. And now we've got to the point where people can make images that basically look like the Pope in a puffer jacket. And at some point, we're going to have to figure out some sort of feature where we can go, no, this actually was, like some sort of extended EXIF where we can go, no, this happened on this camera in this location. This was where it was. Then we can have it verified by the fact there was another camera over there that saw the logical thing. We can ping back to that original camera or the server it was on, and we can go, yeah, this is genuine. Or at the very least, this is a photo of a thing that was there. And,
funny story. So funny story about like something that happened like this morning when I just woke up, because like the Met Gala is going on or whatever. So I saw these pictures on Facebook just scrolling through my timeline, and it was like of the Met Gala, and I swore to God these were real. Like I was like, wow, why is everybody so fat and skinny? And they look going on? Like there's usually celebrities. Like, do we have a lot of fat celebrities? And then I saw where the post came from. It was like an AI generation thing, and I was legitimately fooled. Like, yeah, it's pretty crazy technology right now.
There's a great YouTube channel which my daughter watches, which has got Barack Obama, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, and the Queen. And of course, they're not the real ones. They're all deep fakes and the voices doing having the most ridiculous conversations. It's very funny, but it is very disturbing. You can still tell it's all AI, but it won't be long. One or two more generations, it'll look as good as the real thing.
There's one that's just the voice, which is Banter AI, and as it happens, I'm talking to the chief executive of Banter AI tomorrow. And that's pretty convincing. Oh, apart from the time lag, if it was a satellite phone, you could sort of believe that you're having a conversation with Elon Musk or Donald Trump or Steve Jobs, which is weird. And they're pretty convincing. So and we're actually possibly working on this thing where you can get an AI version of either a celebrity you've got the rights to or yourself being an interactive live chatbot on your site, so you're always there to explain things to people.
No,
not everyone's cup of tea, but that will have a market, believe me.
Yeah, well, I think it's important conversation that war for truth, as Mike started us off with, I think is probably one of the biggest challenges we're going to face with AI making it into every corner of our lives, whether we like it or not. It's going to happen. So certainly that's probably part of what you're thinking through too in the metaverse world, Mike, in terms of how does ownership get represented in a digital environment. So yeah, blockchain can help. I can tell you without fail.
DRM. So it's a bit easier in so digital rights management. DRM solutions have been around ever since ever since Apple. Before then of course. But iTunes 1. The only reason why the record companies would let Apple sell music on iTunes was because they could hold the digital rights management, the DRM piece. And so on the metaverse, it's fancy iTunes technology. So it's not as difficult as you might think. As long as you can create a unique number for that object, the hash, and you can register that hash, then you know whether it's real or fake, and you can assign ownership. So it's quite easy to do. I think there is a massive role for blockchain for, as you said, for verification of images. I mean, CCTV cameras. Every time you create an image, you create a blockchain reference to it, and you create a hash for that as well. It's going to become essential because. And so there's truth will be a real currency because lies are so easy to generate. In convincing lies, that's the scary thing. Really convincing lies.
Mm-hmm. And thank you, Johnny, for actually bringing up the metaverse because I wanted to transition to that topic. So, Mike, take the ball and score a touchdown or a goal.
Oh, crikey. So in the technology, on the Gartner technology adoption cycle, we have hit the doldrums on the metaverse. So we've gone down. So that the hype was one or 2 years ago, coming up to 1 year ago. And now we're at the situation whereby the level of investment has reduced because the rubber's hitting the road. So, so there've been, people said, "Oh, we're going to wear goggles every single day. We're going to replace our monitors with a pair of fancy glasses," and it's not worked out the way that people expected it to. And so you've got organisations like Microsoft who have said at one stage they weren't clear about what they were going to do with HoloLens 3, whether there was going to be a HoloLens 3, have now said, at some stage in the future, when we think it's right, we will release a HoloLens 3. Well, I can tell you, having used HoloLens 2s quite extensively, I'm ready for a HoloLens 3 right now. And the computing technology and the resources is already available to make a really good headset, a generational leap ahead of where HoloLens 2 was, but the investment isn't going in. And I think Saldana's probably being horrible has made the right decision. So the choice is, do I invest a large amount of money in metaverse technology, which is not really taken off the way we expect, or do I switch that investment to machine learning and AI, where I can see a really strong return on investment model? And so money is being switched, literally being taken from metaverse development and put, in Microsoft's case, from metaverse developments and being put into the AI side of it. Now, people might have a different view on that, but that's what I get talking to people in Microsoft and my experience is there's this switch. I actually view that as a good thing. Hype is bad. Hype unrealistically sets consumer expectations, and they think, "Oh, it's gonna be amazing! I can make a cup of tea with this. I can do literally everything." And they put the thing on their head. They go, "Oh, it's hot and it's heavy, and it doesn't do what I expected it to do." And so you get this big imbalance between what they are told it could do and what it can actually do. And I'm really comfortable with what it can actually do because there are real use cases for the metaverse and for augmented reality in particular that have an ROI, They are demonstrably have been shown to be beneficial. Everything from training's always the one that comes up. It's visualizing invisible risks. Something called transparent armor, which means you can put a headset on and see all the way through the sides of a tank to give you visibility when you're driving a tank, because you've got rubbish visibility in a tank or a platform or a ship or a plane. So there are whole series of verticals, different applications, different headsets, different technology, where augmented reality sits really well. But it's not in the position whereby, where are my glasses? I'm using these glasses right now to replace all of these screens in front of you to have this conversation. We're not there yet. So that's where I see us. We're at least 2 generations off. But it's getting there. It's better than it was last year, and it's better than the year before that. But we're now in the doldrums, and then people have to work out what they're really going to do with it and start to build the use cases. Then they gradually all come out the other side. Different players, I think. Different people, different technology.
So Meta is arguably the king of this space, and it's been reported.
Arguably.
Mark Zuckerberg has come out and said that they are super focused on the metaverse, although it's been reported that they're more focused on AI. But from my perspective, I kind of see like AI and the metaverse as like one and the same, kind of just the computer vision aspect of AI, because speaking of augmented reality, with Meta's segment anything model, which is a computer
Scene
vision
understanding.
model. Yeah. It's able to just rapidly identify everything that's around you, and I think it has some depth perception as well. So we can use that as a base to build metaverse apps, specifically augmented reality apps. What's your response to that?
So one of AI is going to have a very powerful role in doing the heavy lift. So the way you make a computer game today, in fact, it's already changing. So where you used to make computer games is you would commission a whole load of very expensive, very talented 3D artists who would sit down and build a world. They would build the cars, the trees, the flowers. They would build the landscape, and they would spend a lot of time putting these things together. What you want to get to is, and you can never have enough of them. You never know. The cost of the art and the content generation on a game is crippling. So, of your $100 million that it takes to develop, what's the one that's the cars? What's it called? Grand Theft Auto 5. Okay, so Grand Theft Auto. You've got this sandbox city. It's all had to be made by artists with the textures and everything else, and that's hugely expensive. And you can't vary it very easily. So you can immediately see that the technology that's been developed for 3D Midjourney is only a few steps away, whereby you can provide a specification of what you want, and it will then use its imagination to fill in the details, throwing the dice lots of times and changing the random weights to get the result. You know what I mean? We call it, it's very close to imagination in my view. So AI for content construction, rapid, massive game changer, because you then make the decision about whether you are going to use that generatively to build a static model, or whether you use AI to build the world on the fly, and that gets really exciting. So that the game you change is never the same twice. It makes the world as you step into it, and as you move, the world is created just before you need it, just in time world creation.
Which might
You're doing
also
it,
be
and it's
how
going to
the
say it's
universe
dead already.
actually works.
Yeah, exactly. I personally believe that you don't exist, and all I can see on the screen are these pictures. And as soon as I turn my back, you're gone. So the second bit is the behaviour bit.
Web edition.
So absolutely. God, that's scary. The second piece is the behavior piece, and you can break that into series of pieces. So, does a glass break and behave the way you'd expect it to do? The physics of it, quite hard. Absolutely, talking to a virtual human to a non-player, to an NPC. So I could go into a game and we could have and my companion could be a digital Marilyn Monroe. We can make it look like Marilyn Monroe. We can make it sound like Marilyn Monroe. I can have a natural language conversation with Marilyn Monroe, and it will use her phrases and turns of speech when I'm talking to her. There's definitely a game there, isn't there? I can just see her now with a pump action shotgun in a zombie game. Can you? As my NPC support, Marilyn Monroe's got my back. Who else? Johnny, who would you have in your fantasy zombie killing game? But you can see where this can go. So there's an awful lot of pluggable bits of AI that we're only a few steps away to make games much more compelling, very holodeck-like. You know, we're only a few steps away from the Star Trek holodeck now. It's great. Can't wait. So anyway, that's my penneth worth.
So my view.
Don't be in generation as a job.
My view on the metaverse is that, like, it should. I think it would benefit vastly by some of the products that blockchain has, such as NFTs, and especially making each model into a decentralized asset. And Kadan, one of your products is the Atomic Dex, which allows you to do atomic swaps with NFTs as well as like currencies and stuff. So do you have a view of the metaverse and how NFT and the role NFTs can play in them?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, besides NFTs, which I think can, act as kind of like the very like layer for all sort of items, right? The projection of physical items into the metaverse, I think, is like one big topic, right? And having kind of like a peg, the interconnection to the real world is kind of will make the metaverse kind of like feel real. For now, to me, it's kind of like, if I look at the metaverse, maybe I'm wrong here, but I look at it kind of like the next generation of internet, but I don't think we're there, right? Like Mike said, a few more generations. And I think it's gonna like grow exponentially with exponential growth and evolution of AI technology, right? This is gonna like go kind of like hand in hand. And I think, the learnings we're gonna take out of this, like even in terms of like core technological, evolution is gonna be just like huge. And so I think, again, like with NFT identity, verifiable, trustless identity is like one big topic I think that can be covered, but also like in terms of like, monetary basis, right? Like you said, Atomic Dex, generally like, like and globally natively compatible with the Web3 like stack. So basically, like you're able like to do like, the trustless, permissionless, cross-chain and cross-protocol atomic swaps, kind of like exchanging assets, storing value, transferring value, whatever. That can be like NFTs, tokens, coins, data, right? Like you name it, like whatever. So the tech is kind of like, globally usable. And to me, I think I definitely see like kind of, like the blockchain stack, like becoming a core and really like fundamental layer within like the metaverse. Definitely. So yeah.
And imagine in a virtual world that a metaverse manifested in the virtual world. Like Andy, what kind of how do you think AI can improve itself in that type of environment? And what would that environment need to be in order to train AI to have the best benefit for humanity?
So what you mean, training AI in the metaverse as in virtual environments, or what is it you're getting at there? Yeah, there's certainly some of that going on with kind of the robotics end of AI is the least of all the areas of AI. It's the one I'm least familiar with. But yeah, I know there's a lot of kind of virtual training of kind of imaginary models in imaginary space. There's a lot of that goes on. There was an interesting thing by Lex Fridman recently about that, but I'm not the person who asked. But it seems to be an interesting area. And was there a second question, kind of usefulness to humanity of AI in general, or
in general? Well, yeah, just like if we have a virtual environment that the metaverse gives us, like what I'm imagining is that if we have these autonomous agents just doing the work, we can have like a virtual, I don't know, like maybe Domino's or something, like a pizza delivery place that the autonomous agent can order from, and then we can maybe send out a drone that delivers you from your metaverse type of reality to your real reality, so you can actually eat the pizza. That's what I'm thinking.
Okay. I mean, drones work, so sure.
Well, I'm just like blending a few different technologies, and I'm just seeing if like there's a role that would benefit like AI in a metaverse kind of space.
Could I just jump in real quick? So about
Yeah, go on. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I'll give you a very specific, I guess, instance where I see it could be very helpful. So about 10 years ago now, I was working with a cognitive psychologist at a university who was building kind of a metaverse, if you will, the early virtual reality for police training for Islamabad, right? So they were working to improve how their police force responded to crime, to kind of slow down some of the human rights violations that were occurring. And that was 10 years ago. You have a cognitive psychologist working with these basically creators of games to create a virtual reality to train policemen on how to respond to different circumstances, right? With AI in the mix, you can give real-time feedback. The evaluation comes in the moment. You can adjust scenarios based on real-time events in lightning speed, right? So the iterative nature of that learning can happen so much faster if, of course, the human is willing to accept the learning.
Yeah, so I guess it's a bit like kind of self-play in trying to teach an AI to play Go or whatever. So yeah, provided that does properly translate into the real world, then sure, it's very useful. So you can, if you can obviously generate virtual scenarios a lot quicker and cheaper than you can get things to actually operate in the real world. So yeah, to the extent that that does translate into the real world, then great. You obviously need to make sure that anything that's relying on relating a conceptual model back to the real world has all its computer vision and its motor stuff all sorted. But yeah, if that is the case, then yeah, you'd always rather train anything like that on either human or artificial. You'd rather train it on virtual environments than real ones, just because they're just a lower cost in every sense of the word way of doing it.
All right.
So I want to do a quick time check to see like where everybody is. Like, do we have another 15 minutes in us, or should we like wind down the podcast here?
I've got another 5 minutes, then I have to jump on something else. So if that's okay.
That's fine. Okay, well,
Yeah,
let's
I'll
wind it down here. So yeah, thank you everyone for coming on this podcast, first of ever podcast extravaganza. Probably first one to ever do it. Not gonna lie, but yeah. So closing thoughts. Would you like to go first, Mike?
No, that's somebody. I've done far too much talking. Let somebody else have a go for a change. How about that?
Well, you're right.
Johnny, go on, Johnny.
That's why I say.
No, I just appreciate.
You're on mute, John.
I think I'm good now. I appreciate the honest dialogue. I don't know either you two gentlemen, Mike and Andy. I'll certainly be reaching out to you, hopefully to connect a little bit more, discuss your areas of expertise, maybe not on a webcam.
Pleasure.
No, I think everything discussed today, I got the optimistic sort of view of everyone in this room, and I truly appreciate it. I think that's what's going to be needed as we work towards sort of a win-win society versus thinking that somebody has to lose in order for us to build a better future. So I just want to say I appreciate that about each and every one of you. And Dwayne, thanks for hosting.
For sure. Andy, what's your closing thoughts?
Yeah, similar. It's been enjoyable. Get to see some different perspectives, lots to think about. So yeah, thanks for inviting me.
What about you, Kadan?
I'll just follow and join the gentleman. Yeah, it was very enjoyable, and I'm grateful for the information I was able to gather, the things I learned, and also it's new for me to speak both an AI expert as well, like AR expert. Is kind of like two areas which I believe are the hot topics in the coming years, and everything is kind of just like moving very fast, and so I'll definitely get back both of you, and specifically Mike, for the pint of beer in the coming probably 2-3 years. I mean, let's see, but yeah, we'll take it from there then.
Okay. So on my closing thoughts, clearly Kadan and I have a bet, which Dwayne's going to oversee the bet, which I'm delighted to, because it's much more interesting if we do that. I think, what have I learned from this talk? Very interesting conversation about the truth, which I think is kind of one of the takeaway messages, is the truth matters and it's so hard to verify. Blockchain has a clear role in that. The second one is about, I think, the speed of development in artificial intelligence, which is terrifying. We'll see whether the general AI bet will be taken or not. My challenge will be, which we haven't really got enough time to talk about now, is the Chinese room problem. Does it understand what it's doing, or is it just simply, running an algorithm? And Dwayne, as always, great to have a talk. And I'm sure we all very much look forward to the next one.
Absolutely. All right. My closing thoughts. Thank you, everyone, for joining. This has been probably one of the most intellectual explosion conversations I've ever had in my entire life. So many different geniuses coming at me with amazing thoughts. And everyone, make sure you check out Mike's platform, augmentedsolutions.com, Andy's platform, collabrating.com, Johnny Law, Digibyte, and various other blockchain coins, and also Kadan. Check out Atomic Dex. You can swap literally any blockchain token with any other token. You can also swap NFTs, all decentralized, amazing tools over at the Komodo platform. With that said, thank you everyone for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.